Welcome to Reddit Chronicles. Here are today's stories. And if you like the video, do consider subscribing to help me feed my channel and grow my cat. Yeah, sure, my grocery cart means I work here. This one starts out a bit slow, but I think you'll want to stick around for the ending. So I finally met one in the wild, the infamous Karen, and I couldn't help but laugh so hard at this lady, only angering her more. The usual, I'm on mobile, yada yada yada. Today I was shopping for my family at the Midwest's best grocery store chain, M. Something I dislike on Sundays, as it is a madhouse, and therefore I usually order my groceries if I procrastinate until Sunday. But I needed a break from my amazing family after so much togetherness over the last few days. We buried my dear mother-in-law Friday after an aneurysm that shocked us all. Like I said, I needed a break, even though I'm on chemo and took it yesterday. I do Saturdays so I don't miss work, and so my students don't see their teacher looking deathly ill. I digress. Back to the story. As I mentioned earlier, I dislike shopping on Sundays, but here I was, ready to tackle the crowds with my on-mission stare, and one headphone in listening to a book, the other dangling out, so people could not only see I was listening to something, and therefore would not approach me, but also know that I could hear them if I was in the way or something. The big red M has produce in the front of the store, and their employees wear blue-colored shirts with khakis or black pants, or a blue apron with khakis or black pants, and always closed-toed shoes, oh, and a visor or ball cap. Today I'm sporting a navy shirt with red, purple, and light blue flowers, jeans rolled up to just above my ankles, platform sandals, and my pink sunglasses on top of my head. I look nothing like the wonderful employees, and since I'm pushing a blue shopping cart and looking at produce, minding my own business when Karen first makes her appearance. K for Karen clears her throat. I move to the side, assuming she just wants to look at the blackberries on sale, 5 for $5. My book is getting interesting, so I don't pay her much mind. Karen, then clears her throat again. Excuse me. Me, I'm sorry, I'm almost done. Midwestern manners kick in, and I hurry up. Karen, exasperated. I said, excuse me. Sorry, I'm sure I looked as thoroughly confused as I was at that point, since I'd only had taken a quick moment to get my 5 pints. Are you done yet? Mind you, I'm walking away from my cart at this point, so yeah, I'm done, dummy. All yours. They look good. It's a good price, huh? Yeah, but I want the ones you got, since it looks like you got the best ones. I think they all look good. Sorry. I turn to leave and go to the bananas. Well, that was rude, she says loudly and to no one in particular. I keep shopping, laughing at how I've just encountered a Karen of sorts, but thankfully made it out unscathed. Or so I thought. Next up is the bakery department. I'm picking up some sweets for my boys, 4 and 6, and my husband for breakfast, since my husband is on bereavement and will be taking the boys into school, leaving me to get some grading done before my students get to my school. Karen re-entered the picture just as I pick up a 40% off package of donuts. Score. I was going to get those. Mind you, I had them in my cart before she was in the area. Okay, well, that stinks. I think, oh, here we go again. It's not fair. You are taking all of the good stuff for yourself. Well, I guess get ahead of me then? No, you need to share with the other customers. I believe store has a first come, first serve policy, but whatever. Customers should not have to wait for you to get their stuff. Me, still not realizing she thinks I work here. Whatever, hun, I don't have to cater to you. I walk away with my donuts. I said I wanted those. I am ignoring her and walking away. Karen was not at all happy about this. Give me those cookies. They're donuts, and no, you can't just take what you want. Give them. Me, still walking away. I got them first, and it looks like I can, and did. Toodles. Big grin on my face. I go up and down the frozen aisle quickly, as all I was getting was popsicles for my boys. I'm in the fish department, which also hosts bacon for some reason, when Karen makes her way to me again. She says to some innocent older lady, Don't you hate when entitled brat employees take things and hide them for themselves? The lady nervously smiles at her as she continues. They think they are special. and they ignore the paying customers. I actually laugh hard at her nonsense and respond as the lady and Karen are blocking my path. I always assume they are not working, on break, or something. I have not worked retail in many years, but I think everyone should at some point, as it helps one appreciate how difficult it can be. The innocent lady smiles at me and says, "You are so right." This enraged Karen, but she is yet to go off, so I keep shopping. I'm looking at the wine selection, trying to figure out if I want to get another bottle or actually drink what I have at home, when again, Psycho Karen approaches. I naively thought that maybe she heard me when I said I don't work in retail. Nope. "I suppose you're going to get some wine too?" Nope, I'm gonna drink what I have at home, but this is good if you're wanting a decent bottle. "I should have known you were an alcoholic." Ha 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 ha. What? "An employee who uses their discount to get some cheap wine. Ha, you are sad." Actually, you, my dear, are the sad one, and I don't work here, so please leave me alone. I'm done with your entitled behavior. Karen rips my headphone out of my ear. It's a cheap pair, but still. "How rude! Take those out!" "Excuse me? Do not touch me again, lady." "I have had about enough of you and your sad alcoholism." "That's funny. I've had about enough of you and your abusive behavior. And for the record, I drink about once every few days, a glass at most, to unwind from my not here position." I know that I worded this poorly. "Do not lie to me. I know you work here." "No, but I shop here regularly, so maybe you've seen me here. I've never worked for M. I know for a fact that no employee looks remotely like me." "Yes, you do. You're wearing their colors even." "So because I'm wearing a different blue with red flowers, I work here?" "You effing..." Yes, she said effing, not the actual word. "Work here." Me, laughing hysterically at my Karen in the wild catch. "Yeah, okay, lady." "Wait here. I'm getting your manager, and you'll be sorry." Oh, and she reaches into my cart and takes my donuts. I laugh and take them back. Karen, red in the face. "Management! Manager! Manager! Manager!" I walk away, and surprisingly, 2 other customers come up to me. Customer 1. "What in the heck was that lady's problem with you?" Me. "I don't know. I guess she thinks that I work here, and employees must bow down to her." Customer 2. "You handled her so well. I would have been frantic." Customer 1. "I know you from somewhere. Are you my kid's teacher?" Me. "I am a teacher. Who is your kiddo?" Kid's name? Me. "How's the project going?" We chat and then go back to shopping because we hear Karen still hollering about needing a manager, and none of us wanted to deal with her brand of crazy. I head to the other, non-grocery side of the Megamart and get what I need and head to the checkout, feeling grateful that I managed to get what I needed without further incident. Or so I thought. I'm standing in line, cart full, when I hear the god-awful voice of Karen. "Let me in front of you. I already reported you to your manager, and she said she'll talk to you later. Employees should go after customers." Hands on hips expectantly. I don't know who you talk to, but again, I don't work here. I have waited for 2 other customers to get through the line beforehand, and while I appreciate your cart has less than mine, I don't think it'll offer you anything since you've been insufferably narcissistic and have displayed downright disgusting behavior. "That's it!" The nasty woman hit me. She actually hit me with her cart. "I'm getting your manager! You'll be sorry!" She took off yelling again as I begun to unload my cart. I'm pale in the face because today is the day after my chemotherapy treatment, and I am not happy with this lady and her nasty attitude. Normally, I would have let someone with a few small items go ahead of me, but not today, as I just want to get home and get to bed. I'm lucky enough my chemotherapy doesn't render me bedridden like it does many people, but I don't exactly feel great. The kind employee notices my sheet white appearance and asks me if I need assistance, and said that they'd already called the manager after the incident with the lady. And normally I would say no thank you, but I take him up on his offer and sit in the blue benches in front of his lane while he and another employee unload and reload my cart. They even put in my perks code for me. This store really is the best. The manager comes up as I'm getting up to pay. Karen in tow. Manager, is this the lady you're talking about?
Yes! Ha! She's still here. Now take care of her. She was so rude and she took all the good things. I bet she steals too.
Manager, perplexed. She isn't an employee. She shops here often, ma'am, so maybe you've seen her?
You're telling me she doesn't work here? Ha! I do not understand why you are covering for her. She stole from my cart.
Customer 1, who I think was waiting around for Karen, is in line and says loudly, you stole from her cart. She just took it back.
Well, employees should not get the discounted things.
Manager, ma'am, employees are allowed to buy whatever they please. And again, I'm sorry, she doesn't work here.
She's a thief.
Me, please just let me be. I'm feeling quite ill, but if you need to look at the video or something, I'll wait. But can you please put up my frozen popsicles? Employee who saw her hit me. Manager, I think you should look at the video in my lane too.
I did nothing wrong.
Manager, no one said you did. She raises an eyebrow. Some other employee comes out. I think he was store security. He says, Manager, I think you'll find the lady in the pink was repeatedly harassing the lady in the blue and even hit her. Turns to me. We can produce video if you want to press charges. Me, I just want to get home. I think I'm gonna be sick.
Call the cops. They'll see she's a thief.
Okay, I am so over you, lady. I will gladly wait for police to arrive, and I'll press charges as you have harassed me repeatedly, attempted to damage my headphones, and hit me. I have never stolen anything in my life, except a piece of candy when I was 5, and I felt so guilty about it that I went back and tattled on myself and paid for it. Manager, let's calm down.
Liar! You stole my donuts.
Me, very calmly and sweet as can be. No, I merely took back my donuts that you took out of my cart. Employee, let's review the tapes. Me, gladly, but can I please sit? I'm really not feeling well.
Faker!
They called the police, and the police officer reviewed the tapes as Karen sat there smugly with a poop-eating grin, expecting vindication. Police officer asks for our statements. Karen jumps in first. I'm visibly sick at this point, and the officer asks if I'm okay. I tell him I'm in chemotherapy and I don't feel good. This seems to anger Karen, who begins yelling at me as it is now my turn to speak. The officer asks her to shut up. She doesn't, so he handcuffed her and said she was going to be charged with disrupting the peace regardless of whether I wanted to press charges against her for harassment and repeated assault, among other things. She went more pale than me, which is saying something. The manager gave me a gift card for my troubles and said with a wink in her eye, if I ever wanted a job, I could have one. I did press charges, which I would have dropped, but since she made me throw up in public, I wanted her to be humiliated too. I plan on using my gift card for some classroom items, tissues and hand sanitizers, and food for my homeless students. I told the manager I didn't need the gift card, but she insisted, and when I told her what I was using it for, the $20 became $100. My students are going to have food for the weekends for several weeks. Thank you, Karen, and M, the Thrifty Acres. You don't want me to sleep for 9 months? Okay, guess you don't need your degree. So, I wasn't sure if this story qualified for pro or petty. Everything I do over the course of this is extremely petty, but I think it is probably what I would consider a scale up from low-tier revenge, mostly on account of the last part. So, some backstory. This was about 6 years ago, during my first year at university. In the UK, you basically have 2 options for accommodations in your first year. The first option is called halls. I'm guessing that's not the mint candy. You stay in a huge apartment complex with a bunch of different students. You share a floor with about 10 to 15 people. Or you go to a student house, which is basically a normal house that some greedy landlord converts all available space into bedrooms for 5 to 6 people. But this is not always the case. In my second year, I lived in a house with 15 people. Many petty revenge stories there, if I find the time to type them out. Anyway, I chose the latter. I moved into what would be a 3-bedroom house, turned into a 5-bedroom. What would have been a living room was converted into a bedroom below my room. 3 of my housemates were fine. We were civil to one another, but not really friends. We just lived different lives. We would go out for the occasional bevy, have dinner together, but mostly just coexist peacefully. Notice how I said it was a 5-bedroom though? I wonder what a bevy is. Enter a housemaid in question. Let's call her Kathy. Kathy was of African descent, very rich parents, sent to live in the UK to study engineering, as the educational system in her native country was very poor. She was short, fat, and quite obnoxious. When I moved in, I made a point of introducing myself to everyone. My first impression of Kathy wasn't great. An issue I noticed immediately, of which persists throughout the entirety of our living together, is that Kathy stinks. You know when you work out for 4 hours, but you crash out and forget the shower before? It was like that times 1,000. It was extensively unbearable. On top of that, Kathy is really rude. She basically starts out by saying she's been here for 2 years already, and she wasn't gonna change again this year. This had me a little concerned, but at the time, it wasn't a huge issue. I told her I kept to myself a lot, so she shouldn't see any problems from me. The first week or so, I didn't notice many problems. I was out partying hard during most nights. At English universities, the first week is called Freshers, where everyone goes out and gets wasted for a week, the week before studies starts. Other than some of my food going missing and dirty plates staying on the side, it's week 1, it's fine. But of course we all know it's gonna get worse. Then Kathy rears her ugly head. What did I say? So, I'm going to bed at 9 p.m., the first night before studies. I had an hour commute to my campus, and first day, I wanted to be very awake, and I hear her shouting downstairs. She sounds very excited. I would find out tonight that Kathy is an avid gamer. Now myself, I love games. I have late night sessions all the time, but I'm respectful of my housemates. I lie in bed, awake until 2:30 a.m., hearing Kathy scream at her monitor and the sounds of a shooter in the background, very loudly. I didn't want to be a bad housemate, so I let it happen. I barely slept, and I went into my first lecture completely exhausted from sleep deprivation. I figured it was a one-off, or it might happen every now and again. I was very wrong. This actually reminds me of something I went through. Maybe I'll share it at the end. This carried on for 4 days before I said something. On the Friday, I approach her in the kitchen and politely say, "Hey, don't want to be rude, but can you try and keep it down a little at night? I can hear you loud and clear through the floor, and it's really messing with my sleep." I don't want to be rude, but I've noticed it's been happening a lot. She basically tells me I'm overreacting. She's doing nothing wrong. Nobody else has complained, so it's not a real issue. Kathy shares a wall with another housemate on the ground floor, so when she gets home, I ask her about the issue. Turns out, Kathy gave her the same spiel as to me. We knock on her door and ask what's the problem, together. She gives us this whole sob story about how hard it is to make friends, that her online friends are her family. They live across the world, and she doesn't want to break that relationship. I feel bad, stupidly, and tell her I totally get it, but just try and be a little quieter on weeknights. She says, "I'll try, maybe," and we leave it at that. That night, I slept fine. I thought it was over. The next night, she's screaming again, but it's the weekend, so I get high as a kite and fall asleep in the bathtub. Sunday night rolls around. She's screaming again. I can hear the sound of her rifle firing in game, and she's shouting obscenities with every shot. It gets to 11 p.m., and I go downstairs and knock. Nothing. I wait a little while and try again. No change. I try again. Same. So I go to the back garden and knock on her window. I hear her shout, "F off!" a few times and give up. I go to bed, but not to sleep. This happens for the next few weeks. She screams, I go to confront, she screams at me through the wall until I leave. I approach her in the day, and she tells me she could hear me, doesn't know what I'm talking about, and I must have been dreaming. Think of a BS excuse, and it's probably on the list of things she would say. So begins the revenge. I start by just going downstairs, flicking the power off and on for the router, and going back upstairs. The house is kind of old and creaky, so it's pretty obvious that as the Wi-Fi goes down, it's me. This happens a few nights until she confronts me as I'm leaving in the morning. I tell her bluntly, yeah, it's me. Stop with the screaming, or things are just going to get worse. She threatens to call our landlord on me. Great idea. I leave the house, go to my lectures, and after university, I visit the landlord. I tell him the entire story about everything that's happening and how hard it's making our lives. He said he'll look into it. Please be patient. More weeks go by. No more pranks from me, but no interference from the landlord. The night I contacted him was silent, but after that, everything went back to Screamapalooza. I contact him again. He says trust him. No changes. I try again. Guess what? No changes. So I start getting pettier. So I failed to mention before, at least in great detail, that Kathy is messy as F. She would eat, then leave all her plates, pots, and pans on the side and return to her lair. For the first month, we just washed them up for her. Nobody wants a messy kitchen. But I was pissed off. So I started a new system. If I see dirty plates of hers, I'd leave it in front of her door. This was funny for a few days, until I started finding my dirty plates she used at my door. From this point on, all kitchen equipment that was mine would from here on out live in my room until the end of my tenancy. This went on for another sleepless week until I'm awoken by my landlord with a police officer. I'm told I've been stealing from my housemates and I need to go to the station. I promptly explain the situation and my other housemates back me up. The officer is clearly annoyed to have his time wasted by us and leaves. Me, the housemates, Kathy, and landlord have a group discussion on how to end the hostilities. We demand quiet weeknights and a clean kitchen. In exchange, we, although really it was just me, will not perform passive-aggressive petty revenge. Seems like a fair deal, right? No. Landlord said he can't give any preferential treatment, so we need to stop regardless. I'm glad to say though, even though this guy was an awful landlord, he never interfered again, allowing for further pettiness to ensue. So, back to revenge. Kathy would run an Ethernet cable from the modem to her computer, along the floor, and into her room. I would start unplugging this cable anytime she was screaming. Kathy then started taping the cable, so it was harder to pull out the sockets. It got to a point where a hallway had a huge mess of tape and wire going across from the router all the way to her room. But Kathy. I bought a roll of the same tape she'd used, waited for her to leave the house. I had to wait 3 weeks for this opportunity. When I finally had the chance, I pulled up the tape, took a pair of scissors, cut the cable, and taped it all back down. How she got into university was beyond me, as she didn't figure it out for a few days. I slept wonderfully those nights. She confronted me days later and accused me of my crime. I simply denied it and slammed the door in her face. After this, it was fairly passive-aggressive on both sides. Anytime I heard the noise, I'd unplug the cable. She'd start eating my food, so I ended up buying a mini fridge and storing all my food in my room, and she would regularly throw out my belongings if I left them around the house. It was all getting a bit too much. Mid-year, I bought a cheap Turtle Beach headset. I knocked on her door and offered it as a peace treaty. I said the noise had to stop and the revenge was starting to get out of hand. Please, take the headset, continue to enjoy your games, but I desperately need sleep. She took the headset, said thank you, and promptly retreated to her room. As a side note, I'd never seen her room up until this point. It was disgusting. Old food everywhere, wrappers and cans. Her bed was half a space to sleep, half pizza boxes and rubbish. The smell was so bad that after the conversation, I went upstairs and threw up. I would only see the inside of that room once again until I moved. So, overly generous peace offering? Yes, but I was desperate. The lack of sleep was really starting to affect my work, social life, and relationship. I hoped it would turn a new leaf. Well, no. All night that night, screaming. I woke up the next day and had a smoke in the garden. As I was pacing, I looked over at her window. Hanging out the window, I see a very damaged Turtle Beach headset. I decided in that moment to destroy her. Before I get into the big stuff, here's a few things I did on top. I would pour salt into her milk and juice. Anytime she left the house, I would cut the Ethernet. I put toothpaste onto her door handle. Any soft drinks she bought, took them to class and donated them to my friends. Anyway, so you noticed that I said I had to wait 3 weeks for my cable prank? I became very aware that Kathy barely left the house. She was 100% not going to lectures or assignments. I started posting letters to her faculty, posing as her parents, asking for updates on her studies. After a few weeks, she would start to get into shouting arguments with her parents over the phone. I then started ringing the faculty to let them know when she wasn't in attendance. Our university had a relaxed approach to this, but all courses were expected to have an 85% attendance rating, or you'd face potential problems. After speaking to her staff supervisor, she had a whopping 23% rating. After a few more calls, it was established that she would have a meeting as essentially a case for her to plead herself as to why she should stay. I took the time to somewhat befriend her supervisor and asked if I could be present at the meeting to profess my story and aid in her expulsion. He agreed. As the days to her meeting rolled up, it was clear, due to the arguments with her parents on the phone, that she would not be staying here if she did not keep her position on her course. She began cleaning up after herself and actually spoke to me semi-civilly, begging me not to speak to the university anymore. I told her if she didn't shout anymore, all the way to the hearing, then I'd retract all my previous statements and give my verbal support to her staying. Zero noise. I slept like a baby for 3 days. Thursday night, meeting was the Friday, rolls around. A final note, whenever Kathy did get up in the mornings, she had an extremely loud and obnoxious alarm clock, which would be on ages. Thursday night, I give each of my other housemates the rundown and ask them to either skip town for the night and let it run its course. 2 stayed, 2 left. Come 9 p.m., I proceed to invite my entire society around for drinks. 30 people in our tiny house drinking, shouting, and playing loud music until 3 a.m. Kathy comes out angry, begging, at one point in tears, telling me to stop. But this, she had this coming. I go to bed at 4:30 a.m. I wake up at 6 a.m. No noise in the house. Good, she's asleep. I go downstairs to the switchboard and cut the power. I go out, eat breakfast, and go to the meeting at 8:30 a.m. Much to my delight, Kathy does not turn up. At 9 a.m., I give the committee a full rendition of the past 9 months of hell and proceed to strongly advise expulsion. Afterwards, I call my university and fake having the flu, asking for a recovery period of 4 to 5 days. They accept, and I go back home to see my family for a week. I return to a house, one less occupied, with a few standout pieces. In front of my room, the now almost dust Turtle Beach headset. LOL. But I ventured to her room. The smell had not left permanently, but it was bearable now. Many of her possessions were gone, but many left behind. Most notably, her printer and several pieces of balled-up paper around it. Firstly, balled-up printout copies of flight tickets to her native country and a flight map. A letter from the university denoting her immediate expulsion. A letter from her landlord noting that as per the tenant agreement, if she cannot find study again within 28 days, she would be forced to leave the house. And finally, the creme de la creme, a letter clearly intended for me and the housemates that she gave up on, telling us how this was all our fault and that one day she would come back to haunt us. Thanks for the many upvotes and such, guys. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Most of you, anyway. Dun dun dun. So I'm getting several comments calling me fake or lying and so forth. First off, yes, it's really bad that the university allowed me to be in the disciplinary hearing, let alone even tell me it was happening. I frankly wasn't concerned about the logistics at this point though. I just wanted her gone. Secondly, pointing out race isn't racism. Pointing out that she came from a country with a poor education isn't racism. I'm not racist, it's just background to the story. Trying to paint me as a racist for pointing this out is petty in and of itself. I'm probably going to regret this, but what do you guys think? Do you think it was pertinent for her to mention that her roommate was from Africa? Why or why not? Let us know in the comment section. If you want more where that came from, simply click on one of these boxes right here. And if you liked the video, I assume you did since you're still here, share it with your friends to see what they think. And of course, if you haven't already, click the kitty to subscribe and you'll never miss another video. I'll see you in the next episode of Reddit Chronicles. Entitled Parent Tries to Bully a Platoon of Infantrymen in DC on the 4th of July, Learns the Errors of Her Ways. Backstory: joined the Army right out of high school. During basic training, I volunteered for a unit within the Army known as the Old Guard, TOG from here on. The Old Guard is responsible for ceremonies in the DC area and funerals in Arlington National Cemetery, among other duties. The Old Guard consists of units you may have heard of, such as the US Army Drill Team and the Sentinels of the Tomb of the Unknowns, as well as lesser-known platoons, such as the Presidential Gun Salute Battery and the US Army Continental Color Guard. And it's the oldest active unit in the Army. I only say this to emphasize that the Old Guard isn't some unheard-of rifle company from butt Egypt. It's a fairly big deal in the Army, and in the DC area in general. Story time. So no there we were. It's the 4th of July in DC. Big celebration, all kinds of stuff going on. I'm sure you can picture it. Most of the celebration goes on in front of the Capitol, on the National Mall. As part of the festivities, my unit, the Presidential Gun Salute Battery, fires the bass line for the performance of the 1812 Overture, 3-inch anti-tank guns firing blanks. Only the more seasoned guys in the platoon get picked to do it, so the rest of us are given a cordoned off area in the very front. We bring some food, some chairs, our families, and have a cookout during the day and watch the show when it starts. During the earlier parts of the day, it isn't too crowded, but as evening draws near, it becomes packed in nearly shoulder to shoulder. Fortunately, as I mentioned before, we had our own area at the front roped off from the general public, giving us ample room to have our cookout. Perk of working for the government. Throughout the day, we would have people politely ask if they could join us. We said no, but we were always respectful. We weren't in uniform, but we had our t-shirts on, so we were still representing the Army. Enter Karen. It's midway through the afternoon, still a few hours before the show. We're enjoying the weather and the time off. I happen to be near the edge of our area when I hear someone behind me. I turn around and there she is, pinched face and a haircut that says, "I want to speak to your manager's manager."
Excuse me, young man, could you ask your father to take this rope down? This is supposed to be a public area for everyone, and my kids can't see the Capitol.
Mind you, there are signs hanging on the rope every 5 feet explaining the purpose of the rope. Me, with my best public relations smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This area is reserved for members of the Old Guard and their families. If you'd like to come back a little closer to dusk, we'll be taking the rope down around then."
The Old Guard? I've never heard of that before.
Me, always happy to drop knowledge. "Ma'am, the Old Guard is the primary ceremonial unit for the US Army and escort to the President of the US of A."
I don't see the President. Shouldn't you be escorting him or something then?
Rolls eyes. I had no idea how to respond to that. Fortunately, I was saved. Platoon Sergeant, PSG from here on, placed his hand on my shoulder. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Sergeant First Class Guy in Charge. What seems to be the problem?" As I knew this was my cue to get the F out, I went back to my chair and observed their interaction. Couldn't hear anything, but the interaction concluded with Karen walking away looking annoyed. Didn't think anything of it, until about 2 hours later. We're cleaning up our trash, breaking down the chairs and tables and such. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Karen approaching again, this time with 2 Capitol police officers in tow. Platoon Sergeant must have noticed too. I heard him mutter, "What in the F?" under his breath as he walked to intercept the trio. I didn't hear all of the conversation, but we all heard about it later. "Officers, What seems to be the problem? Cops, obviously exasperated by the situation. Sergeant Guy in charge, we received a report that your soldiers were making lewd gestures and comments toward this woman's family. Is there any truth to this? Ha 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 ha. Absolutely not. I've been supervising them all day. Nothing ever close to that has happened today. Cops, nodding as though this was what they expected. We assumed that, but we had to follow up. Sorry to bother you.
You mean you're going to just let them sit there and hog up all of that space? I drove my kids 9 hours to see this.
Ma'am, these men are here with the express permission of the Capitol Police and the District of Columbia. There are signs there, points to a sign not 3 feet away, that explicitly state that. Platoon Sergeant, trying to defuse the situation. Ma'am, we're cleaning up our area right now. As soon as we are done, we'll be removing the rope to let everyone in. If you can be patient and wait, we can get you and your family right up front here in about 20 minutes. Karen proceeded to stare at them, much like a cow stares at an incoming train. Then she spun around and walked away without another word. We think it's all over. We go back to what we were doing. We were wrong. We were just finishing up, taking the ropes off of the pylons and stacking the pylons in the arms of another dude in the platoon. Out of nowhere, here comes Karen, trailed by her 4 children and obviously stressed spouse. I'm assuming spouse could have been boyfriend or baby daddy.
It's about time! Get out of my way!
Karen all but screams as she goes barreling right through Private Another Guy. Gotta pause here for a second. To be in the Old Guard, you have to be between 5'10", 178 centimeters, and 6'4", 193 centimeters, and maintain the Army standard of physical fitness. To add to that, the Old Guard is an infantry unit. If you aren't aware, infantry are generally the frontline soldiers in combat, and we are trained for just that. So, suffice to say, none of us were small, nor weak. Karen was probably around 180-ish, so when I say she barreled through this dude, I mean it. She put some force into it. Another guy goes sprawling to the ground. Steel pylons fly in every direction. A couple hit him in the face, chipped a tooth, and split his eyebrow open. One pylon bounces off the ground and hits one of Karen's F trophies in the leg. The kid, probably 12 or 13, starts wailing like he lost a limb. As we are helping another guy to his feet, Karen is losing every last ounce of her red-faced, screaming about how she's going to sue us for assault, how we probably aren't even real soldiers, how we ruined her family vacation, blah blah blah. At this point, Platoon Sergeant is done with her. If Karen thought she was being loud, she quickly learned there are few things louder than a pissed off senior non-commissioned officer. With a single word, he quieted everyone within 50 feet of us. Stop! Paused for dramatic effect. That is enough! You have been harassing me and my soldiers all afternoon. We have tried to be nice. We have tried to be respectful. You have been nothing but rude. Now you've injured one of my soldiers. This stops now. I think Karen might have had a small stroke right then. She stood, mouth agape, not able to utter a single word. And then, as if right on cue, here comes those 2 Capitol policemen. They hadn't been far away and had seen the entire incident. I didn't think Karen's eyes could get any wider until the first officer pulled out a pair of cuffs and said, "Ma'am, turn around and put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for assault and harassment." She tried every excuse she could think of, but the cops were having exactly none of her shit. They talked to another guy. He wanted to press charges, so they carted her off. I don't know what the father did with the kids. They disappeared when the cops took Karen. Come to find out, after another guy comes back from the court hearing, Karen had been carrying 3 bottles of pills that weren't hers, and 2 stolen credit cards when the cops searched her. No idea what kind of time she got, but it wasn't enough. After all was said and done, we watched the 1812 Overture and laughed about Karen for weeks afterward. Another guy was fine, a chipped tooth and a little bit of bruising. Nothing major, fortunately. TLDR, Karen tries to bully an infantry platoon out of our cordoned off area during the 4th of July celebration on the National Mall in DC. She gets arrested. She has drugs. We laugh for a long time. Moral of the story, read signs. Don't F with the infantry. I wonder why she didn't just read the signs, or maybe she ignored them? What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
Sorry, this is my taxi. But I called it. But I'm pregnant and racist.
Entitled soon-to-be parent? A pregnant woman tried to take my taxi despite having seen me waiting outside and having heard me make the call. She even said, "Waiting for a cab?" To which I replied, "Yeah," before I got back to my phone app games to pass the time. About 10 minutes pass and my taxi arrives and I head over, but the woman says,
"Sorry, but this is my taxi."
The driver asks for me by name and the woman says,
"That's me."
I'm like, there's no way you have my name and called the same cab company. I call an unpopular taxi company because I'm friends with a few of the drivers, and this was one of them. I say, "But I called it," and she's opening the door already. The driver literally says, "Hey, this is her taxi," pointing to me. The woman looks upset and says,
"But I'm pregnant. I really did call this taxi too. And blank really is my name. She's trying to steal my taxi."
I don't even know this woman and I'm getting really upset because I've worked a long day and don't need this. The driver and I exchange frustrated looks since he knows me and he knows I called. Then he says, "Alright, I'll use my phone to see who called my cab." He uses call recognition and dials the number. My phone goes off. The pregnant woman now tries a new tactic. Racism.
"All you Pakis,"
he's from East India,
"are the same. You'll believe anyone who gives you $1.
Anyway, I scooted around to the other side to get in behind the driver while he keeps all the other doors locked so she couldn't get in. She was furious and yelling the whole time, and my driver starts pulling out and says to me, "I would have happily taken her to where she wanted to go with you, but at this point, I'm just gonna tell everyone to avoid her." He took her picture to warn his fellow drivers about her racism and potentially threatening behavior, since by the end she was threatening to break windows, and I went the hell home. Nothing says "provide me a service please" like going from zero to racist. This is actually mind-boggling for me. There are just so many things logically wrong with this woman's behavior. If anyone wants to take a shot at trying to explain it, please do so in the comments. If you want more where that came from, simply click on one of these boxes right here. And if you liked the video, I assume you did since you're still here, share it with your friends to see what they think. And of course, if you haven't already, click the kitty to subscribe and you'll never miss another video. I'll see you in the next episode of Reddit Chronicles.